Parents with grown children who no longer speak to you. What do you think led to the estrangement? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. My kids still speak to me, but not much. I'm better than I was, but I was a crap parent. Poverty was part of it. Hooking up with the wrong men just to have a little more income or not to pay for childcare. Bad chemical decisions. I got myself cleaned up, got out of debt, got rid of the guy who was harassing my boy, and acting like the girl, our kid together, could do no wrong. My parents were atrocious, and I really thought I was much better. Actually, I was much better, but I wasn't enough better. It was hard for me to show love because I never experienced it myself. There were times I didn't hear from my boy for years, and honestly, I know I deserved that. I wrote him a long letter, apologized for my faults, and honestly have tried to be better. We have a much better relationship now, and while we are not super close, we have something, and I'm grateful. Story 2. Not me, but I was on a Facebook group a few weeks back where this older woman in her 60 seconds claimed to be estranged from her kids, and she didn't know why. She assumed that the kids were hard to deal with, and she did her best, but no matter what, they were always out to get her or feel that she was being aggressive. When someone made a comment or suggestion saying that the way she phrases things may contribute to it based on how she spoke, this woman flipped out on the person who commented. When I followed saying, if that's how she speaks to them, then I can see why they may feel that way. She flipped out on me saying I don't know her story and that she was the nicest person she ever knew. Some people just genuinely don't have the mental capacity to learn how to grow. Story 3. My father recently died with 2/5 of his kids talking to him. Both of those two had considered cutting contact. I had a few emails exchanges with him before he died to discuss why he had never met my daughter. He made excuses for what he could and denied the rest. He couldn't live with his actions, I think. Anyway, he told everyone that all his kids were just mentally ill and it wasn't his fault. I think he honestly believed it. Then he ended up stealing 5/6 of the money my mom had left to us kids with him as trustee and gave it to his second wife. Guy was a prince. Story 4. My mom and I stopped talking for a 14-year stretch. When my son was very little, we were on vacation with my mother. My wife and I had a small disagreement about his breakfast, and afterwards my mother pulled me aside and said I should take my son with me to a hotel for a few days to teach my wife a lesson. I disagreed, telling her that I didn't feel that I should be taking marital advice from a woman who had been divorced 3 times. She didn't take it as well as you might think. We finally started taking again when my grandmother passed away and have been fine ever since. Story 5. My daughter doesn't talk to me as much anymore. She moved out when she was 22. I had psychosis episodes for 5 years all of a sudden, no history of mental illness like that. Just your old run-of-the-mill anxiety and depression. And after her having severe mental issues dealing with the aftermath of a tragedy, I got the mental issues and I had to be hospitalized for suicide attempts. It traumatized her. I understand why she pulled away, even if it was for something I couldn't help, and I don't blame her. My last attempt was in November, so I hope with time we will be able to be close again. I text her every few days to tell her that I love her, and she responds in kind. We text about life a few times every few months, but we used to be best friends before the tragedy that upended her life, and then mine. It altered the course of our lives. Story 6. I grew up an orphan during the Great Depression, and there was no way that my kids would have an easier life than me. I would do everything in my power to recreate my joyless, deprivation-filled childhood for them, so that they would know firsthand what I went through. I would offer no emotional or financial support, because I had none. I would crush any interest they had, and sabotage their every action with the ferocity of Genghis Khan. I would do things to them that in today's world would be on the news. I would put on a cheerful and friendly face to the outside world, and immediately revert to my evil self at home. I never tired of raging and shrieking. I would be completely shameless at all times. I thought nothing of living a life of deceit, yet paint myself as a devout religious person. I lived a life of agonizing pain, never had a moment of love, laughter, peace, or safety, never knew where my next meal was coming from. So, was it really so awful that I continued that tradition with my own kids? I skipped her funeral. Story 7. My mother literally couldn't tell you. I don't mean she doesn't know, I've told her, but she's clinically delusional and actual narcissist. Straight up rewriting memories as they happen to the point she thinks we're plotting against her when we agree and she doesn't. She claims my partner is why. She told my family I was on drugs. Ironic since she's on just about everything and can't see our youngest brother without supervision anymore. I don't know what she did for that, but due to my own childhood, I can guess, and it's not good. Story 8. The people whose kids cut contact rarely have enough self-awareness to comment on something like this. I cut my mom off in 2020 for a variety of reasons. She got deep into QAnon, COVID conspiracy theories, which was the straw that broke the camel's back. Prior to that, she was a covert narc that got worse and worse as I got married and had kids. Tons of passive-aggressive comments, never taking responsibility, criticism, and complaining. It was exhausting talking to her, and I slowly limited my contact. Last time I spoke to her in person was April 2020, and didn't hear from her ever again before she died in January 2022. Story 9. My daughter hasn't spoken to much in the last 2 years. She'll come to family, her grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, but only replies to anything I say with 1 or 2 word answers. I wish I could say I don't know why, but I do. Her mom said she feels I put her second after her mom and divorced. I keep trying to rebuild that bridge, hopefully in time. The takeaway is this: it doesn't matter how you perceive things, it's how your child does. Don't ever let them doubt how you feel about them. Story 10. I had a daughter that my parents kept making plans to come see, but then canceling the day before. The last time, when my daughter was already packed to go see Grandma and Grandpa, and we had been hyping it to her for weeks. They called and canceled the trip with no excuse, and then I later found out they went to a baseball game with their friends instead. I was used to this kind of abandonment and would laugh it off in the past, but as I held my 6-year-old daughter while she cried her eyes out, I vowed she'd never know that kind of unreliability in her life. That was the last time I spoke to them. My wife wrote them a letter a few years ago, but they never wrote back. My daughter is 14 now, and I am toying with the idea of allowing her to meet them since she's more mature, but they'd probably just cancel again. Story 11. My parents are too old for Reddit. I estranged from them because they never ever wanted me. My mother didn't want kids, but in that day that wasn't an option. They had my sister first and sort of used up their love on her. When I came along 5 years later, they didn't have anything left. I didn't find out until 35 that it wasn't anything I did. My mother just really didn't want kids. By then, though, I'd internalized close to 4 decades of being unwanted. I am terrified of being abandoned and have had rafts of therapy. My parents were never abusive. We had food on the table and clothes on our backs. I had My Little Ponies and She-Ra figures. I also attempted suicide for the first time when I was 11 years old. I started drinking when I was 15. My parents did not notice. They told me I was the independent one, so I didn't need their love. We also were not a demonstrative family. My family did not hug or kiss or touch in any way. I think I have hugged my parents maybe 10 times or so. Both parents are quite smart, and there was always a kind of judgment about people who couldn't use their words and had to use their bodies instead. Like only poor or stupid people hug their kids. I could go through a list of what they did for my sister versus me. I would be accused of hyperbole or of making things up whole cloth. We were only nominally raised in the same household. Her life had a very different trajectory. Suffice it to say that it wasn't just the love that my sister used up. Time, money, effort, ideas, conversation. I got none of those things. If it matters, I don't blame sister. We still talk. It wasn't her fault. Story 12. My mom will claim that I have no reason to no longer speak to her. She will swear up and down until she is blue in the face that I have no just cause. She will claim that my brother doesn't speak to her because his wife turned him against her. She will say that we both must take after our father who abandoned her too. She will leave out the part where she is an emotionally abusive narcissistic alcoholic who repeatedly pushed my boundaries to the point where I had to cut off contact. I had worked with a therapist for over 10 years trying to set boundaries with her with ever-increasing consequences, mostly via withholding contact for disrespecting them. The last thing my mother told me in person was that I was an ungrateful just like my dead father, a particularly terrible wound for me since I never knew him. After she tried to disregard a reasonable boundary yet again. She is a hoarder and tried to bring more over to my apartment again to fill my house with junk. I wouldn't let her in the door, and that's what I got. She will leave out that my brother cut off contact with her when she wouldn't stop putting his wife down, because he is her precious golden child baby she tried to engage in emotional incest with. The last straw was when she looked at his wife and called her a lesbian because she cut her hair short. Not that being gay is an insult, but everyone knew she meant it is as the most heinous insult imaginable. Did I mention she also morphed into a homophobe transphobe in later years? To add the finishing touches, All me and my brother asked was that she apologize to us and his wife for what she said. We even apologized for the very justifiable words of anger we said during the altercation as a result of her actions. She refused. She claimed she wasn't wrong and was justified. In that moment, I realized I never heard my mother apologize for anything even once in her life, even when she accidentally slammed my best friend's fingers in a car door or rolled over my dog's tail with her car while backing out of the driveway. She cannot take responsibility for the pain she has caused for even the most blameless accidents. Honestly, I get really sad sometimes that I don't have a mother at all. But I never feel sad I don't have her as a mother because she wasn't one. I fought so hard to keep her in my life. I did all the work to try to find a way for her to remain in it and keep my sanity. But she couldn't even lift one finger by giving a simple apology to fight for me. Story 13. I was estranged from my adult daughter for quite a while. I know where I f***ed up. I wanted all of the control so she couldn't make the same bad choices in life that I had. I thought that only I knew what was best and forced my thoughts, opinions into every conversation. I tried to steer her clear of the hard road, but she took the exit anyway. I was a total pick-me mom. I was jealous of her relationship with her deadbeat alcoholic father and resented them both. I had to learn to let it go. This was way before Frozen, by the way. We have a pretty good relationship now. We have not gone to counseling, but we have spontaneous chats about her childhood, young adulthood. I can see things much clearer now and have done a lot of crap I didn't know that. And heartfelt apologies for my honest failings. She's a mom now herself who asks me for advice. Gasp! I don't think she really forgives me for everything, and that's okay. There's some stuff I don't forgive her for either. We have a truce and try to work through the hard stuff together. Hopefully, we will come out on the other side with a better understanding of each other. Story 14. Answering on behalf of my grandparents. They know why. My grandmother sent a letter to my brother telling him that they don't accept his gay lifestyle, despite being proud of him for other things. My grandfather signed it. That side of the family blew up as they refused to apologize because they didn't see it as wrong, simply an expression of their faith. The relationship between my grandmother and me, my dad, my brother is ruined. The relationship with my grandfather is much more complicated than it should be. He signed the letter, but there's some weird emotional abuse there that's hard to explain. He feels he owes his life to my grandmother because of circumstances when they got married, so he goes along with whatever she says, no matter how he feels in private. Anyway, they're fully aware of why they're estranged. They just see, well, it's an expression of our faith as an apology and a sincere mea culpa, and no one else in my family does. Story 15. Just a sister of 2 other siblings who don't speak to our parents here. I talk to my mom a lot. I spend every Sunday with her and my dad. I was the baby of the family, so I guess things were different for me than my older siblings. My brother, being the oldest, was responsible for everything. I think our parents expected too much from him, so the first thing he did when he turned 18 was get out of Dodge. Also, with him being the oldest, he always protected me. No matter how stupid it was, he would take the blame for things I did. IDKY. But he did. He doesn't call or visit our parents unless they call him. My sister, she took on a mom role to me. When my parents divorced, my mom worked her life away, and my sister constantly had to watch me and take care of me, and she took on a mom role. I don't think she wanted to do it, but she also left as soon as she turned 18. My sister will occasionally call our parents every so often. I go out of my way to see and talk to our parents. I love them wholeheartedly, and I can admit the way I was raised versus how they were raised were completely different. But I think the disconnect with them and our parents is how much they just didn't get to be a kid and enjoy being a kid like I did. Their childhood was always focused around me. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.